Welcome to another event by PASSUP, or Pittsburghers Against Single-Use Plastic. Today, we're going to be talking about plastic on campus and hearing from quite a few students at local colleges and universities about their work to reduce single-use plastics on their campuses. I am Maren Cook. I'm part of the PASSUP steering committee, and I am your Zoom host. So if you have any technical questions, you can chat me in the chat. You can direct message me in the chat. In general, I'm going to ask that everyone who isn't speaking stay on mute to avoid weird background noises building up. The event is being recorded for posterity and folks who couldn't make it. And so you have the option of having your face on camera or not. In general, if you are not on camera, although your name appears to the other participants, it does not appear in the recording. And also, if you, even if you have your video on, it may or may not appear depending on what the setup is at the time. And you also have the option, most of you are probably old hands at Zoom by now, but you have the option of seeing everyone if you click gallery in the viewing options in your upper right, and or just the speaker. And in some cases, the speaker will be multiple people because we will have a panel once the students have had a chance to introduce themselves. And any other notes? Yes, if you have questions or clarifications, I suggest you put them in the chat, and then we'll try to make sure that we address everything before the session is out. So so we have a good screen and a half worth. So anyway, at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Ed Wren, who is a fellow steering committee member of Pittsburghers Against Single-Use Plastic and a local activist in several realms, including native plants and environmental landscaping, and definitely plastics. And he's also a physician, so he comes from a place of knowing impacts on human health. So I will. Thank
you, Maren. I didn't expect an introduction.
Away.
Okay, so first, I just want to welcome everyone, especially our student moderator and panelists, and anyone who made them possible. Pittsburghers Against Single-Use Plastic, or PASSUP, is against unnecessary single-use plastics and for joyful collaboration for alternative product systems and ways of being. And since Maren allowed me, I'm going to say briefly that I'm the co-president of Wild Ones Native Plants Natural Landscapes local chapter, and we want to have an event similar to this about what college and university students are doing about native plants and natural gardening techniques. So if anyone is interested, please reach out to me later. And please go to our work in progress website, passupnow.org, to learn more about us and to be put on our email list if not already, and we'll put that in the chat. And also note that we are planning a similar event to this regarding what K through 12 students and their students, their faculty, et cetera, are doing to reduce single-use plastic. So look for that on February the 20th. So we're very happy to have our moderator, Zachary Delaney, and he will introduce the panelists. And I'm joking around that Zach has moved a few blocks north from Pitt because of climate change. And at Pitt, he earned a Bachelor of Arts in Environmental Studies with a certificate in sustainability while leading an extraordinary variety of major environmental initiatives there. And at Chatham, he is now a candidate in the Masters of Sustainability program, and I'll put his full bio in the chat. And Finally, a few words from me with some help from history. In the 1967 film, The Graduate, Dustin Hoffman's character was given a single word of advice: plastics. But now I give you a better one: renewables, and not just for energy purposes. In 1961, John F. Kennedy, in his inaugural address, said, "Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country." And now I say to you, ask not what our environment can do for you. Ask what we can do for our environment, which includes ourselves. So please take it away, Zach and panelists.
Thank you both to Maren and Ed, not only for introducing some Zoom etiquette and some background information, as well as your organizations, but also for introducing me. As mentioned, my name is Zach Delaney, and I'm a Master of Sustainability candidate at Chatham. For my years in higher education, sustainability has always been a fairly large priority, and I've been working to advance it either through my education or through variety initiatives done at the institutional level, which is where a lot of important change needs to happen as much as individual action is relevant. I'm honored to be moderating this panel, and I'm really excited to hear from other current university students as well. Just a few housekeeping items before we begin. First, I would like to re-emphasize one of the things that Maren said earlier, which is to make sure that if you are not one of the panelists speaking and you've not been called on to ask a question, that you keep yourselves muted so that we don't have any background or feedback noise. Second, the beginning portion of this panel is going to include either an initiative or sustainability highlight from each of our current panelists, which will take us until I would expect around 5:15 to 5:30. After that portion, we will then have a dedicated question and answering time that will be open. If you have questions before that Q&A starts, feel free to send them into the chat or write them down for yourselves. If one of our panelists gets done a little bit quicker than we expect, we may be able to address one question in the chat before we move on to the next panelist, but at time discretion, we'll save any any questions that have been chatted to us for that dedicated slot in the last 30-45 minutes. Also, I would imagine, if this is cool with Maren, that whenever we have that dedicated Q&A, we'll be using the raise hand function for people to be able to unmute and ask their questions verbally if you do not want to chat them to us. For our panel itself, I will just give a quick intro for each of our panelists in their speaking order. So we're going to be going alphabetically by college and then by their first names. So we'll have Allegheny College speaking first, with Megan Swing and Rachel Pieto. We'll then have Carnegie Mellon, who's represented by Jenna Stanislaw. We'll have Chatham, represented by Larson Scheller, the University of Pittsburgh, represented by Henry Mongrain, and West Virginia University, represented by Danielle Witt and Rachel Hood. You can feel free to see their names and also see their affiliations in their little tag underneath their video part whenever they are on the Zoom and they're pinned for speaking. So I will hand it over then to Megan, and we will begin our little highlights.
All right. Hi, I'm Megan Swing. I am a current senior at Allegheny College. And what I did to reduce single-use plastics here on campus was to bring back our Green Box program. So our Green Box program started around 2011. Rachel is demonstrating one for me because I was unable to grab one before. So we started that in 2011 to work to shift away from trying to count all of our waste during the Recyclemania phase that a lot of colleges did, to just completely reducing it. So throughout those years, green boxes became well implemented in the 2 on-campus dining halls, but that was all paused due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So before the pandemic, it was completely mandatory to take food to go in one of them and optional in the other. So when the pandemic hit, we stopped all green box use, because we were unsure of how the virus was being spread, and we wanted to be safest for the public health perspective. But once we knew that we could use the green boxes and it wouldn't be a public health risk, we slowly began implementing them back in Brooks, one of the on-campus dining halls. But my project that I worked with Kelly Bolton, the director of sustainability here at Allegheny, was to bring them back in the other campus dining hall, which is known as McKinley's, or KINS as a lot of the students refer to. So I worked with Kelly to first address some of the issues that arose, because since the pandemic, how students got their food at McKinley's dining had changed. So the Green Box program had to reflect that. So we met with some of the workers and representatives of Parkhurst Dining, who provides the food and services at Allegheny, to address some of their concerns. And they said that in order to bring back the program, we would need a second return machine, and they would need more space to wash and dry them within the facility. So Kelly and I were able to find money in the budget to buy a second machine. It is gloriously in McKinley's now, waiting to be started. I think we're starting that next week. And we were also able to find these special peg racks to wash and dry the containers to help save space, since that is very limited in the McKinley's kitchen. So that's a little bit of what I did. So I was able to work through some of the problems and bring back a sustainable feature to Allegheny College that helps reduce the waste. So I guess that's just my quick little spiel. I can go into some more details, or if anyone has a question, I am more than happy to answer about Allegheny and our culture of sustainability, or just the green boxes on campus.
Thank you very much. And on the second half of Allegheny, we can now have Rachel.
Hi, as Zach said, I am Rachel. I'm a junior here at Allegheny this year. And last semester, I kind of worked in tandem with Megan and with our Director of Sustainability, Kelly Bolton. And my project was working on our Reusables for First Years program. So as Meg said, a lot of things got derailed by the pandemic, and this was one of them. So the origin of the program kind of started, as Meg said, with the Recycle Mania phase that a lot of colleges were kind of going through in the 2010s. And Allegheny students weren't happy with the fact that we were just seeing how much waste was produced rather than actually doing the job of reducing the waste. So students kind of band together and they approached the Director of Sustainability and the Dean of Students, and they came up with this Reusables for First Years program, which means that every student upon their arrival here at Allegheny gets a water bottle or a tumbler, which will help them to reduce their waste here so they can use it in the dining halls. And we have water refill stations all over campus. I believe we have 24 of them. So you can pretty much take it with you everywhere. And we encourage that you do so through this awareness campaign that we have as well. We have a bunch of signage on campus alerting people to use these refill stations, to bring their water bottles, and everyone gets really into it. It's very exciting. We kind of, as Meg said, create a culture of sustainability here at Allegheny. So, you know, sometimes the freshmen won't remember as often as juniors and seniors do to bring their water bottle everywhere, but we really try to encourage it, and it's very common for everyone here. So in 2020, the program did come to a halt because of the pandemic, and we're kind of working on revamping it this year. So that was what I did with Meg. And we kind of created this reusable kit. So it comes with 2 straws, a stainless steel spork, a straw cleaner, and a pouch that holds everything, as well as the student's choice of tumbler or water bottle that they'll get completely free of charge. And we worked on designing the straws, designing the pouches and everything, just so that we can continue reducing our waste as much as possible, not just when it comes to single-use bottles, but also single-use plastic, which we use compostable plastic here at Allegheny, but like everyone is saying, we also obviously want to reduce it as much as possible. And we are putting this into place next week. So we're going to be tabling all next week, handing out these items to first and second year students that missed out on this opportunity due to the pandemic. So it's super exciting. I'm very happy to be part of bringing this back. And yeah, that is what my project focused on.
Thank you very much, both of you from Allegheny. Again, if you have any questions for either of them specifically or just for our panelists in general, you can either save them for whenever we do our open Q&A, or you can send them either directly to me in the chat or to everyone in the chat so we can see. Next on our list, we will have Carnegie Mellon, which is Jenna. So you can go ahead and begin whenever you're ready, and we can try to get you spotlighted too.
Hello, hi. So I'm Jenna. As Zach mentioned, I'm from Carnegie Mellon. I'm currently a senior, and the majority of my sustainability related work at CMU has been through a student-run organization called Sustainable Earth. And unlike the Allegheny County initiatives that were just mentioned, sort of what we've been doing is a lot more like long-term advocacy work. Something that I could talk about for an incredibly long time is the fact that CMU does not have an Office of Sustainability. So a lot of the student-run initiatives come from, our club as opposed to a higher up authority or without backing from a administrative body. And so a lot of the advocacy work we've done has been talking with like housing and dining to reduce plastics. And so specifically what I am, I guess, most proud of is the work we've done with dining. So dining at CMU is a little different than dining at a lot of other universities because we don't have dining halls. Instead, we have separate dining locations. And basically you just get like takeout from these places instead of sitting down and using like actual silverware and a normal plate. So that naturally creates excessive amount of plastic waste, and especially like number 5 plastics, so that you can like reheat the containers and things like that. And in addition, all first year students both have to live on campus and are required to have a meal plan. So there's a big push towards all the first year population like producing all of this waste. So something that we've done is encourage the various vendors on campus to switch to compostable or paper containers and utensils. And so over time, in the past 4 years that I've been at CMU, I've definitely seen a shift in that direction, although we certainly have a lot more ways to go. And another thing we've done, in addition to improving the sort of takeout containers and utensils that we've been giving out, is also trying to spread education about how to properly dispose of any of the trash that gets generated from dining. So this includes improving the signage, making it specific to the different dining locations. Because all the dining locations are different vendors, there's often different types of containers that are associated with different places. And many students, really want to properly dispose of their containers and of their utensils and just have trouble figuring out where they're supposed to go. So we've been involved in standing by containers when there's big events to make sure people dispose of things properly. We've been involved in helping to make better signage and more specific signage and things like that. And the other last thing I'd like to mention about that is that every year that I've been involved in Sustainable Earth, which is all 4 years that I've been at CMU, we get students that either join the club or approach us who aren't part of the club, who talk about different ideas that they have to sort of decrease the amount of plastic waste that dining produces. And it happens every year, and there's always different ideas, and I think they're really great. So for example, we had students suggest that you could bring like your own container and get a discount on the price of the meal. Things like that. And we haven't seen as much come to fruition from that, but that is still something that we've been working on as more smaller individual projects such as that. Thanks.
Thank you. And I definitely do agree that dining is a particularly tricky and high waste producing sort of area of campus activity, because it's one of those things that almost everybody has to participate in, as compared to a lot of things that maybe are more optional or have better, more eco-friendly alternatives. Next up, we have Chatham, which is also where I'm from, and we will be having Larson Scheller speaking.
Hi, I'm Larson. I go to Chatham and I'm a senior. So Chatham is known very well for their sustainability. Amongst famous alumni, we have Rachel Carson. So Chatham itself tries to, center its teachings around sustainability off of the beliefs of Rachel Carson. So we have 3 campuses. We have Shadyside, Eastside, and Eden Hall. And all of them have gone about their own ways and their own speed to reduce single-use plastics. And I'm speaking specifically more from like working with the Office of Sustainability. One of the biggest initiatives was that we stopped selling disposable plastic bottles. And with this, they saw that the solution would be to implement refillable stations. So all over campus, you're able to refill your water bottles, and it has worked really well. It's been really convenient for students, and most students you would see would carry their own reusable bottles. And as we mentioned with dining halls, there's a lot of waste that comes from dining halls. And with COVID, it is a lot harder to be.
Uh-oh. Larson seems to be. You broke up a little. Do you want to back up a sentence or so?
Yeah, I think. Can you still hear me?
Yes, now we can. It just
Okay,
was for a moment.
Okay, so yeah, we implemented the fill stations. That worked really well. But now we use in the dining halls compostable cups, plates, utensils, napkins, lids. And we see that signage is really important for that. So anywhere you eat, there is a spot for landfill, recyclables, and compostable. Compostables have their own bag that go into an AgRecycle bin that is on each campus. We actually had a Master's of Sustainability student do her thesis on trying to get an AgRecycle bin onto the East Side campus, and she was successful. So now each campus has their own bin. And we even have a sort of closed loop system because the farm at Eaton Hall uses the compost that is produced from AgRecycle. Despite having this, like, we still find ourselves with plastic problems because as well as you can make signage, some people still might throw things in the wrong bin, and that can make a contamination issue. But the Office of Sustainability has also worked towards doing the Green Box program that Allegheny had mentioned. That was really successful. A lot of students love doing that. And, you know, after COVID, it's become more regular now that we know it's not a contamination issue. The Office of Sustainability also has eco-reps, and the eco-rep position is designed to teach students how to dispose of things properly. And those students are very committed. You'd see them even like sorting through garbage to make sure that things are going in the right place. So yeah, thank you for having me speak. If anyone has any questions, please let me know.
I would be willing to bet that there are a couple of people who are participating here that have dug through garbage before, and I would consider myself one of them. Next on the list, we will have the University of Pittsburgh, and again, this will be Henry.
Hello, my name is Henry Mongrain, and I'm a third-year environmental engineering student at the University of Pittsburgh. Now, as one would expect from its environmentally aware student body and campus culture, the University of Pittsburgh is a bubbling cauldron of sustainability initiatives. Many of Pitt's students are extremely environmentally aware, and the university makes a strong effort to incorporate these concerns into its brand image in order to continue to attract like-minded students. However, although concern about single-use plastic is present, the problem is still significant. Numerous sustainability initiatives have been created at Pitt over the years. Some are student-led, while others the product of partnerships with national organizations, such as the Post-Landfill Action Network, which can provide expertise and funds to student activists. The faculty, especially faculty in the environmental science and geology departments, are extremely supportive of student-led sustainability initiatives. And many of these sustainability efforts at Pitt also contain synergistic components that address other social issues. For example, one undergraduate student activist I spoke to mentioned her plans to work toward making plastic-free feminine hygiene products more accessible. However, many grassroots plastic reduction initiatives at Pitt have withered away because of declining interest or lack of funding. The university administration is infamous among its students for making empty promises on environmental issues. I would venture to sum up the main obstacle to plastic waste reduction efforts at Pitt with the single word, apathy. Nevertheless, there have been a few glowing success stories, which the university is rightfully proud to tout. For example, since 2014, The University of Pittsburgh has provided all incoming freshmen with a pack of reusable alternatives to items that are commonly made of single-use materials. The pack includes a thermos, bamboo silverware, and a reusable shopping bag. And by far, the most successful part of this initiative has been the shopping bags. Since they began providing reusable bags, the consumption of single-use plastic shopping bags at on-campus Pitt-owned stores has decreased by roughly 95%. The administrator I spoke to estimated that this number represented the avoided use of 1.2 million shopping bags between 2014 and 2021. Sometimes the solution to single-use plastic is reusable plastic. Another successful initiative to reduce pit dotting waste involved a different type of reusable container. This program was in principle the same as the Green Box program Megan Swing discussed at Allegheny College, in which students can have their food packaged in sealable high-grade plastic boxes and return them at machines in exchange for a token that is part of a token system that prevents students from obtaining more than one plastic box at a time. An administrator I contacted asserted that this program has prevented the use of more than 10,000 single-use disposable containers in 2021 alone, an already dubious figure even before considering the lower throughput of campus dining during the pandemic. Although normal plastics are still commonplace at the University of Pittsburgh's dining, styrofoam has been another success story. Single-use polystyrene, also known by its trade name Styrofoam, has been almost completely eliminated from Pitt dining locations, including the Chick-fil-A in the university's basketball stadium. However impressive or inflated these success stories are, though it is still clear to everyone that the University of Pittsburgh and its students generate large amounts of plastic waste. Resource-savvy solid waste disposal options are widely available on campus. Bins for single-stream recycling and industrial composting are available in most buildings. However, the university's recycling stream is frequently so contaminated that much of it is rejected. So most of the plastic that is discarded at the University of Pittsburgh is sent to the landfill anyway. The COVID-19 pandemic has greatly increased the University of Pittsburgh's dependence on single-use materials, just as it did at the other colleges that presented this evening. During quarantine periods, the university's dining halls only offer takeout meals in plastic containers. An undergraduate student who fed herself with a student meal plan in 2021 described the wasteful packaging to me as, quote, horrendous, unquote. Regarding single-use plastic at Pitt, there are three things that are clear to all stakeholders involved. First, many students and faculty are passionate about the sustainability issue and have launched initiatives to reduce plastic waste. Second, a large amount of plastic is still being sent to the landfill. Third, there are many remaining opportunities for waste reduction at the University of Pittsburgh.
Thank you very much, Henry. And that was a very fun fact about that Chick-fil-A. It is, I think, it was the first and perhaps still is the only Chick-fil-A location that does not use styrofoam cups for its drinks and milkshakes, which is just like, you know, you win. You have to recognize your wins, even if there are still many progress points that need to be made. It's also a good example of institutional leverage because they wanted to be there and we wanted them there. So the cups are compostable as well. It's not just a different single-use plastic. We will now have West Virginia University coming onto our roster, and we'll first have Danielle.
Hi, my name is Danielle Witt. I am a senior animal nutritional science major at West Virginia University. I first really got into environmental work by joining the Student Sierra Coalition at WVU. It was just a small little organization where they did mostly like trail cleanups and things like that. But I got to meet Rachel, who will also be talking this evening, and through their leadership, I got more into the plastic reduction and petrochemical industry work. So at WVU, some of the things we've worked on in the past year is we really want to also try and do the reusable to-go container program that others have spoke about tonight. And that launched this past fall semester, and it's been pretty successful. Even though it's just been up for a semester, over 1,000 people have already enrolled in the program, which is very exciting. So instead of those like black plastic clamshells, now we have the green to-go container program. And it's very similarly set up like others have described, where you have a tote-based system where you can switch it out and then return it to the dining halls when you want it cleaned. Rachel and I have also worked on creating a task force at WVU. Rachel created, I have helped facilitate it in the past year. And that's bringing together administration, faculty, dining, procurement, and other like organizations and students to bring like-minded ideas on sustainability. And that gives a lot of people a voice. And it's really nice and convenient because everyone's not working on the exact same project, but they're unaware. So bringing all those like-minded organizations together has been really helpful in creating new projects at WVU. We have also launched a petition to try and get the president, which is Gorngi at West Virginia University, to sign the Break Free from Plastic Pledge, that's just saying and a promise that we as a land-grant university find that sustainability is important and we do not want single-use plastics created more and distributed. So that's what we've been working on. Our petition drive has 950 signatures, so we're almost to 1,000, so that's really exciting. And again, that just shows that students and faculty are really invested in this sustainability initiative. We are hoping to launch a waste audit in the spring, and West Virginia University is a very research-driven school, so being able to have those statistics and that data will be really helpful. We're gonna try and partner up with different groups and find out not only what's going to landfills, what's not being recycled, what contaminants are being put in the recycle, but we're also doing a brand audit. So we're going to see which brands are the largest plastic producers on campus, like Coca-Cola or Unilever. And having that information, we're going to send to the national brand audit. And so a university like WVU can actually have a large impact and be a part of this national audit. For the spring, we're also wanting to do an art exhibit to help promote the petition around campus. We are making these little dragonfly figurines to hang up around campus and also use during tabling. And that's really just a way to promote and educate on the issues and the dangers of single-use plastics to those who don't really know much about it. And I think that's a cool, creative way to get everyone involved. And anyone can make the figurines, they're super easy to make. So we're gonna get new students involved as well. And I'm also a STOP fellow through PLAN, which is the Post Landfill Action Network. So I get to have the opportunity to work with many students around the Ohio River Valley to decrease the effects of the petrochemical industry, as well as reduce single-use plastics. So those are just a couple of things that we've done at West Virginia University to help decrease single-use plastics, and we're hoping to continue to do that in the rest of the semester.
Those are all really, really great things to hear. 950 signatures on a sustainability focused petition is one of the highest rates of success I've ever heard across any university, basically. So that's really genuinely awesome. And art activism is also super cool. So we'll have our last panelist, Rachel, talk now, and then we will take a short moment, I think, to just give recognition to our Pass Up Steering Committee members and then shift into the Q&A period.
Yes, hello, I'm Rachel. I am a master's student at West Virginia University in the geography department, and I do research around natural gas pipelines in the Ohio River Valley. And last year I did the Students Taking on Oil and Petrochemicals program. As Danielle said, it's called STOP, and it's through the Post Landfill Action Network. And so when I was at WVU doing that program, I started the Plastic Free Task Force along with Danielle and the Student Sierra Coalition. And she already covered what they do. But this year I actually am the coordinator for that fellowship. So I work with Danielle and 5 other students in the Ohio River Valley, one of whom is on this call, and I won't call them out in case they don't want to talk, but feel free to say something in the chat. And I get to sort of advise them on launching campaigns on their campuses around single-use plastics. So Danielle's doing the task force and the petition. Another student instituted a reusable to-go program. We have a couple other students running petitions on their campuses, and somebody is starting an intersectional activism club that's rooted in petrochemicals in Washington and Greene counties in Pennsylvania. And then So the Break Free from Plastic movement, as I'm sure many of you know, has an arm through the Post Landfill Action Network where it's getting schools to sign the pledge that Danielle talked about. 10 schools across the country have signed onto the Break Free from Plastic pledge, which says that you'll get rid of all non-essential single-use plastics and reduce plastics wherever possible in other realms. And there's 70 schools in the country who are running campaigns around that pledge, which you can check out on PLAN's websites. And then through STOP last year, we also started this group called the Youth for Appalachian Climate Justice Coalition. And we had a conference that was really rooting sort of the petrochemical build out and the environmental issues we're seeing today in Appalachia in global analysis of the root causes of these things, which are capitalism, imperialism, patriarchy, racism, xenophobia, etc. And so I'm going to drop the link for that, as well as PLAN's Plastic Free Action Camp, which is coming up. So students at any school can do that action camp. And it's teaching sort of some of the foundational skills about how to organize on your campus around plastics, whether that be through the Break Free from Plastic pledge or something else, like trying to implement a reusables program, which all of you have done successfully. Feel free to give advice on sorts of the other things that we should be teaching students. But those are just sorts of some of the things that I've gotten to do. So I really enjoy being able to mentor students and see them institute these programs on campus. I think it's been really rewarding. And I think it's really awesome to see how many schools are succeeding, especially schools in this area where we do see it as more of an uphill battle, just because of the history of the places that we're in and sort of people in power. But that's my spiel. And I'm going to drop the link to the action camp if people are interested, as well as the Instagram for that coalition, which is not super active right now. We're in a weird transition, but it will be active soon. So that's my thing.
Okay, thank you very much. Great highlight for PLAN, which I think is an awesome organization. I know a couple of people who work for them. I've attended a couple of their camps, super cool. I think that if I'm correct, Maren is perhaps going to do just a brief recognition for our Pass Up Steering Committee members, and also just announce a couple of other organizations and initiatives that are associated with this particular theme and sustainability in the area. And then we will move on to our Q&A time.
Yeah, I thought that since this was a Pass Up event, we would just recognize the Pass Up Steering Committee members who are here, which is a little tricky. So we have Becca and Diane. I can't seem to spotlight Diane. Maybe I have to make her a co-host to spotlight her. And Ed, of course. Am I missing anybody of who's here? We have a former steering committee member, April Kusura, who helped us get started. So I just figured we would say hi on screen since we're who got this going. The event, Ed was the powerhouse behind making this event happen and is taking the lead on events. And where's now Diane? Where Diane? There you are. There you go. Okay, somebody got you in. Good, because I tried to make you and I couldn't. Anyway, juggling Zoom. So, so yeah, I'm Maren. I am a planetary scientist by training, but these days doing mostly environmental education and activism around climate, air quality, plastics, food, and justice. And I'm on the steering committees of Pass Up, of 350 Pittsburgh, of Reimagine Food Systems, which is part of the Reimagine Turtle Creek initiative, which gets gardens going for people in underserved neighborhoods east of Pittsburgh. And Group Against, on the board of Group Against Smog and Pollution, and part of People of the Petro Coalition. And I'm sort of involved in a lot of things, and part of that is related causally in both directions to the fact that I organize and host a monthly environmental education event called Sustainability Salons, which normally are a giant potluck mini conference here, but these days, of course, are on Zoom. I have a big email list and have events every month on all kinds of topics. The next one is on February 5th on forest restoration in our region. And I did put in the chat my email, and just you can email me with salon in the subject line. You can also look at Marin's list, which historically has been a online listing of environmental and social justice events around Pittsburgh, but they changed the platform and now it's a real pain to do and haven't kept up with it. So it's mostly where salons live in terms of information. And the list is, of course, completely private to me. So if you send me your email, I won't share it with anybody. And I'll throw it to Becca, who wrote that amazing article that we were just looking at the beginning before we started, highlighted on PASUP's website. And
Oh,
has her
which
own
one?
blog.
I came in
Didn't
at
you
the
write
last.
didn't you write, you stuck a big article on the front of PASUP's website. That's what shows.
Oh, well, the most recent one is just it's saying that we were having this event, but the how to get your friends to go green has been
That
up
one.
for. Yeah,
Well, it's very big and helpful. So, and
Thank you.
Becca has a great blog called the Earthlings
yeah.
Handbook.
I have had a website for about 25 years now, since before blogging was a thing. And with blog software, it's become much easier to add articles. And so I have 900 and some articles in the Earthlings Handbook, and they're not all about the environment, but because it's a guide to how to live on Earth, a lot of it is about how to treat the Earth gently and have fun doing it. So that's what I enjoy writing about. And I have been thinking about reducing single-use plastics since Earth Day 1990, basically, is what got me thinking about it. And when I first came to Carnegie Mellon in 1991, that was the first place I had ever been where there were recycling bins next to the trash cans everywhere, and where you could get your reusable mug and get a discount on your beverage. And I thought it was great. So the campus culture at that point helped to encourage me, but it's depressing that after 30 years, there's still so much to be done. And yeah, we didn't have takeout containers then. There were paper plates, but they didn't have boxes. It just wasn't a thing. So I'm really glad to see that people are working on that now.
Yeah, it is wonderful to see what all these students have been doing, students, and I'm sure each of you represents a greater effort at your own school. So this is vital and it's incredible progress. And I will now let Diane say hi.
Hi, everybody. I'm Diane Peterson, as Marin just said, and I just want to thank all of you panelists who did an amazing job. Yes, now you can throw darts because I'm the person harassing you to get your bios and your headshots, and you all did an excellent job. Thank you so much for that. But thank you so much more for really excellent presentations and excellent work that you're doing. Thank you so much. I'm, as you hear, a member of PASUP, the steering committee, as well as a board member from where, Marin? Oh, she's on.
I'm muting because there's background noise here. I'm saving you all from.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Break Free from Plastic.
No,
National Board
yours.
and
Yours.
what?
I'm trying to plug you.
And Putting Down Roots. Yes, Putting Down Roots, which
board
is
member on
yes,
Marin's
thank you.
group, Putting Down Roots.
Board Steering
And-
Committee. I don't know. It's pretty diaphanous.
That's right. And I work with POPCO, People Over Petro. And I'm working with Break Free from Plastics, and I have a unique opportunity there to work on the executive outreach working group, which means just last week I get to meet with officials. I've never done this before. I've met with people on the state level and the local level, talked to people at the health department, talked to EPA, all of that kind of stuff. But I've never met with officials at the federal level. So that happened this last week, as we're working to ban the sale of all disposable plastics at the national parks. So that's really exciting. And like I wrote in my bio in the intro, I have 2 alternative plastic businesses right here in Plastic: Our Children, Our Earth, Toys and Eco Goods, and Diane's Dishware, that helps people to have dishes that are not disposable if you're going to have more people at your event than you have dishes. Anyway, that's too much. And thanks for letting me have the time.
I guess that leaves me, right?
There you go. And Ed, who you
Hey.
met at the beginning, but
Well, I'm
And
a
you've
family
already-
medicine trained
yeah.
physician, and I just want to say that I retired early from clinical practice because I thought I could do more good for the public health by focusing on environmental issues, because ex post facto is not the time to be dealing with environmental harms. I'm a secular person, but I remember a sign in front of a church once that says, better to prepare and prevent rather than to repair and repent. I want to recognize Eric McDangdang in the call, if I pronounce his name correctly, and if he's still on, from, I think he was Pitt Student Body President. And feel free to please say hi if you would like. I'd also like to recommend Sean Moundas, although he may have left. He was a former PASSUP steering committee and is he's a staff member at Pitt. And also Laura Lovett, distinguished professor of history at Pitt, who we hope will be doing a presentation for us in March regarding the history of plastic and possibly how people ever survived before we invented, not we, them, invented plastic. So Laura, please say hi. There you are. If you unmute yourself.
I can go.
Hi there. So I'm relatively new to Pittsburgh, and I started teaching a course on the history of plastic because a lot of my students didn't make the connection between plastic and cracking.
Mhm.
Cracking.
And Laura spoke at a recent sustainability salon on consumerism with an awesome historical perspective of a not so awesome situation we find ourselves in. And thank you again for that. And that raised that event, which was in December, my annual focus on consumption, because I have the nefarious goal of sending people out into the holiday season to buy less stuff. And Laura was part of that this last year, and that raised PASSUP's enthusiasm for having an event with Laura coming up in the
Fantastic.
not too distant future. So thanks for sharing your amazing insights, Laura.
Eric, are you on the call? Did you want to speak? Okay. Well, I think it's time to go back to our moderator and our wonderful
Yes.
panel. Zach, take it away.
Does Diane have something real quick?
I did have something really
Oh,
quick.
okay.
I forgot to mention that part of the whole quagmire of COVID is all of the disposables. And one of the things that I do have in my store that I will be getting back again soon, because I've sold out, is the Breathe 99 mask that Maren is going to demonstrate here. It's a way of having a higher quality mask, even higher quality than the N95, because this one is an N99 and it is reusable. So if anyone is interested,
Doesn't fog your glasses.
yeah, if anyone's interested, please, I'll put my contact information in there, because I will carry extras in the store, but I don't carry a ton because they're pricey, $50 each. They're $60 if you get them online. So it can save you money, but mostly it's going to save the environment. And like I said, if you're interested, I'd like to know ahead of time, because I do not want to have a ton extra, but I want to have enough to serve you.
And
Thank you.
support a local business.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for mentioning that. Yeah, I found out about them because my cousin, my second cousin's daughter was involved in the design, and I last winter I think got close to 100 on people's faces around Pittsburgh, but I happily turn it over to Diane, who is an actual business person.
Okay, and let's turn it over to Zach.
Yes, and our amazing students. And remember, folks, you can put questions in the chat, or if you have something that is best conveyed on screen in voice, raise your hand.
Very good. Do you think that we could have, is there a max for numbers of pins? Do you think
I'm gonna
everybody
try to
knows?
spotlight all the students now.
Awesome. Thank you so very
Just
much.
take me a moment. They'll creep back onto your screen.
While this is happening, I do encourage everybody to start thinking of any questions that you may have. I've had a couple of questions and I have some of them written down so that I didn't lose them.
And would the students like to put their contact information into the chat if they haven't already, if they'd like to?
Feel free if you have, I believe that there's a couple of folks that do have plan emails. If you'd prefer that over, there we go. There's a post landfill email. Or if you feel comfortable being reached, definitely I'd like everybody to share it to each other. So one question that we just had pop into the chat really quickly. Anybody can feel free to answer if you have the knowledge base for the questions, unless the question is specifically directed towards one of you. But this person asks, is there any possibility to recycle number 5 plastics?
I do know of a possibility if folks don't have other answers.
I think I might know a little bit. It's rough. Like, it's not an easy one to recycle. And I think it's sort of a shot in the dark if you throw it into municipal recycling, if it'll actually get recycled. To my understanding, Whole Foods, I don't know if they still have one, but they had a little bin inside some of their stores that you could bring type 5 recycling to. I tried bringing some around the time of the pandemic and they just told me to like get lost. So, you got to go check. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to recycle it, definitely make sure that it's clean, because if it's contaminated, there's no way that they would take it. And I'd say look for a specific type 5 bin.
There is another resource locally, regionally. There's a hauling and recycling company that has for a long time done metals, and more recently, just because they have the equipment to haul, and they have started taking collection of all plastics 1 through 7. They are in the South Hills. The company's name is Michael Brothers. And what they do with it is they take it somewhere north of the city, I forget exactly where a company called Hydroblocks uses it to make sort of water diversion and filtration stuff. So the plastic still exists, but it has another life that could be long. It might be laid in trenches underground. It's also used to soak up water in container plantings. So there is a thing, they don't have drop-off spots around town. So somebody would have to coordinate to take stuff to them. They're in Bethel Park, I think, someplace South Hills. And it's Michael Brothers. So that does exist. And it is at least another use. But even better is just to not have the plastics created in the first place, as everyone here knows.
Thank you. Another question that we got in the chat, again, anybody can answer. What do we think can be done about single-use plastics, particularly in departments like athletics, where you have entire teams, perhaps, of players in variety sports that are getting Gatorade bottles, water bottles, have these sponsorships, and are using lots of single-use plastics and likely not recycling them? Do we have anybody who's either had experience in working on initiatives with athletics, or any thoughts on getting athletes as sustainability spokespeople to support those initiatives?
And I'm sorry, also single-use plastic at athletic events, by the attendees or spectators, fans.
Right. Which is, I know, a huge portion, I think, of Recycle Mania, which has, from at least how we used to do it at Pitt, a game day challenge for waste diversion at a basketball game.
Nobody. Well, something to put in your pipe and smoke it.
Well, I know that Danielle has some stuff about it. Maybe I'll go and you can fill in, but someone at WVU did a bunch of research, and there is this cup company, Ball, which does aluminum cups, which are recyclable, so you can get those for stadiums instead of the plastic cups. Also, souvenir cups are sometimes used to have people have a refillable cup. WVU has some issues with that because WVU sells alcohol in their stadium, so I think it's kind of school dependent. But I know schools like NC State also have people sort of man the waste bins at their games to tell people what to put where and have compostables in the stadium. I don't know as far as actually taking the plastics out at the stream. I know some schools have tried to get their athletes to not use plastic water bottles at games, but to have refillable, only refillable Gatorade bottles or whatever. Danielle, I don't know if you have anything else.
Yeah, the only thing else I would say is I know at WVU, at basketball games, for example, they sell reusable souvenir popcorn containers. And so things like that can also reduce the plastic. But one of the big things that is really hard is WVU is sponsored by Coca-Cola. And as we all know, that's a very big polluter. So something like Rachel and I talked about before is renegotiating contracts whenever they do come up. And so that can be a way to possibly say we're only going to buy either this much plastic or try and switch more to aluminum as an option. So renegotiating contracts is another way I would say to try and get rid of plastic before it can even enter the stadium.
Okay, another question. What have been some of the most effective ways to create messaging around sustainability initiatives and to not only have it be effective, but accessible and inclusive?
I think just to speak upon what Chatham has done is working with sustainability as a sort of systems function rather than placing all the blame on the individual, and working towards systems that work, that are accessible for everyone. Because if you have those systems in place and they are accessible, then it doesn't really need to be a decision of whether or not you'll use it if it's there. In when it comes to how you're eating, if there's compostables in place and that's just what you're given, that creates just a more sustainable culture in general. So when you're able to change the system itself, it makes it more of the norm, and you know what I mean.
Megan?
So this is actually something Rachel and I spent a lot of time thinking about and thinking through while we were working on our prospective projects. And I think one thing that Allegheny has been able to do is that we provide the green boxes. You don't need to pay for your first one. And we provide these kits free of charge for the students, so there's not an issue of cost. And another thing Rachel and I looked into was making all of these reusable practices accessible to everyone, including those with disabilities. So we talked about getting the straw mouthpieces on them, and we met with someone at the school just to have that be something that is considered going forward as these practices become more mainstream.
Accessibility and inclusion, I think, are really fundamental pieces of sustainability. One initiative that I worked with at Pitt included trying to break some of the menstrual equity and stigma surrounding the period, quote unquote. And that included getting menstrual product dispensers in all major restrooms and buildings at the university. This was paired with an initiative to give zero waste reusable products, but at a baseline, we have to recognize that not every single person's body can utilize one of those, and not everybody has the resources necessary for them. So having baseline products that are single use is important. And one portion of that was making sure that it was ADA compliant, because those are installations in restrooms that need to have specific dimensions, that need to be in specific locations to ensure that they don't break ADA compliance for wheelchair accessibility, and also to ensure that they're in open and public accessible locations, so that if one of them's in a quote unquote men's restroom, it's not in a bathroom stall that then suddenly has the stigma of being perhaps like a trans stall or something like that, and that they are not only accessible to all in the restroom, but that they're not stigmatized and that's broken down. I did see Rachel pop the hand up. I don't know if you'd still want to say anything. I just thought that I'd give a taste for that.
Oh, that was just an applause. That was very good and comprehensive, and yeah, a good model. You should send that to other people. I would just say one other thing. I think especially in this area, as far as messaging, is like rooting it more in the petrochemicals side of things. Like, I think people know that single-use plastics are bad, but are also tired of like being shamed around it, which is totally fair. Like, it's exhausting just being a person, and like convenience is really good when you're like working more than 40 hours a week and you're a student, blah, blah, blah. We know. And so I think like rooting things in sort of the immediate danger to this region is something that speaks more to people, especially because it's shifting the blame not on individual consumption, but on like these corporations that are polluting us, and how we need to disentangle ourselves from them.
Very good.
I want to butt in for a second to say that Larissa Russo is in the Zoom. And briefly, that there's kind of like three major tiers. One is individuals, two is business and institutions, three is politics. And she's in that middle tier of business. She started a business called the Refillery right on Murray Avenue in Squirrel Hill. Would you like to say hi, Larissa?
Hey everyone, this has been a really great event, learning a lot, and I've really enjoyed hearing what all the students are doing. Yeah, we are Pittsburgh's first dedicated refillery for personal care and home essentials. So you can bring your own container and reuse and refill. So yeah, thank you for organizing this, and thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you for going forward boldly.
Okay, another general question that we got from the chat. Have there been efforts on your campuses to introduce more plant-based food options, or perhaps in general, maybe just lower meat consumption? I heard a couple of head shakes, or I saw a couple of head shakes suggesting no.
Well, Zach, as I'm sure you'll remember from your time at Pitt, the University of Pittsburgh does make vegan foods available and plant-based foods in general available to students who want them, but I'm not sure to what extent there's been a genuine reduction, that there are plant-based foods available, but I'm not sure that they try to make an effort to make less meat-dense things a default.
Thank you, Larson.
So Chatham used to have really good vegan food. When I was a transfer, I toured there. They gave me like 4-course breakfast. It was amazing. And that was at Eden Hall at the sustainability campus. And then there's the Shady Side one. The Shady Side one wasn't as good. And then the pandemic happened, and all of a sudden they like don't know what vegan food is anymore. So I know a lot of students that like were vegan or vegetarian in particular that like just can't do that anymore because of the campus. And it's really frustrating, because like a sustainability campus should have those options, because, you know, so yes and no.
Any other panelists? We have a couple of questions coming up that are directed towards specific individuals. So if you haven't talked yet, you'll probably get a chance soon. Okay. I do know that I have heard a couple of universities that address meat consumption and production by maybe cutting their like burger patty size from 1/3 of a pound to like a 1/4 of a pound, or other just like variety, things like that, like changing the standard serving size of a piece of meat to a slightly smaller ounce or gram amount, although that doesn't equal good plant-based food alternatives. So I think that, as Larson mentioned, we really do need to have better options available. And it's not just about, for once, it's not about actually reducing something. You also have to be producing something in the case of this. But we do have a couple of directed questions, and I'll start with our folks at Allegheny. So how do you feel that your waste reduction efforts like fit into your overall like greater sustainability efforts? And what are your like next steps that you're looking at as an institution or as, you know, students there?
I don't know if Meg wanted to take it, but I guess we can kind of split it up a little bit. So Allegheny's major initiative, I would say, is the fact that we're a carbon neutral college. We became carbon neutral in 2020, and we're actually carbon negative now. So we're doing really, really great with that. But everything is kind of pushing towards that, and waste reduction as well is super important. I saw a couple questions about composting in the chat. We do our own composting on campus. So we compost all food waste here, and it gets used as fertilizer, which is really great. So there's a lot of efforts going on where we've really been pushing the carbon negative. So divesting from fossil fuels has been super important. That's been a big push from students lately. Yeah, Meg, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, I was definitely going to highlight the carbon neutral and how we were able to achieve that in 2020, even though 2020 was not the best year for a lot of things. And I think some of Allegheny's other strengths include the internship that Rachel and I were able to complete, where we were able to work individually on something and promote it and have it become something campus-wide. So with every semester, there are new initiatives being started and or carried through and being built upon, which I think is truly amazing and speaks to like just Allegheny's strength in sustainability. I'm trying to think if we have anything towards like the plastic side. I know we're trying to work on having our buildings be LEED certified, and that's all I can think of right now.
Thank you so much. I actually am going to use kind of that train of thought to bounce over to Jenna. So you mentioned earlier that you see a lot of consistent student enthusiasm and like student initiatives around single-use plastics and working on that kind of reduction. What are some of the challenges and maybe some of the strengths also of implementing student initiatives and those student ideas at CMU?
Yeah, I certainly think one of the big challenges, what I sort of like alluded to earlier, is not having a super centralized like authority at CMU that is focused on sustainability. There's a lot of different groups and a lot of different individuals, but we don't have an Office of Sustainability. We don't necessarily have consistent funding for students who have projects. We do have some smaller grants, but it would be great to have, you know, students propose ideas and have people that aren't other students be able to pick up the work. A lot of times my organization finds that there's a bunch of us that want to work on things, but we're also students and, you know, some people, we also have jobs. And so it's really hard to balance, you know, implementing and starting out ideas with also, you know, going to school and being a person. So that's one challenge. And I think another thing that maybe some of the other panelists can also, you know, relate to is the rate of turnover. It takes a lot of time to get things implemented, and you have 4 years, maybe less, out of school. And so it becomes more challenging to sort of, even if you do start something, to maintain it or to find people that are continued to be interested in it. On the flip side, though, there's definitely a lot of strengths in that. I think the students, you know, have a unique perspective on what actually matters to students, what students are actually going to use, what's most effective. And so I think even though a lot of changes do come from administration, they do try to have panels and things to really get a student perspective on what actually matters. And so that at least makes us feel heard, although it would be great to have, again, more administrative support, but we take what we can get, right? And I also just think having a passionate student body with no matter what, I'm confident that, after I graduate in like 10 years, I'll come back and there'll still be students that are passionate and still fighting to implement the initiatives and continue to improve things. So yeah, it kind of goes both ways.
That's good to hear. This is just a general question for all of the panelists. You can answer just with like a literal thumbs up or a thumbs down. Do any of you have a sustainability fee in your student like activity fee or a green fund for funding sustainable initiatives? I know that Pitt does, but perhaps Allegheny, Chatham's looking like no, CMU's maybe no. WVU, not sure.
I'm pretty sure that WVU doesn't have it. My undergraduate did, which was Oberlin College. And that was like a $23 fee in everyone's tuition. And then they had, they could give out like thousands of dollars every year for different projects.
I know that Pitt has a green fund, but it does not have a fee for it. So it's funded through just a measly like 0.012 of our student activity fee of like a bajillion $1 million, which gives it a couple thousand to dole out every year. And then maybe just another like little fun, I guess, sustainability focused question that breaks a little away from the topic of like plastics and things like that. But did anybody's university host any like mutual aid funding during the COVID pandemic?
Well, so you're saying like the university, like administration,
or like the like student government or anything like that? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, I know WVU is like students can apply for like, I don't know if it's like CARES funding, but there's like student relief that you can apply for. I don't think anyone at WVU ran mutual aid. People at Oberlin did. The like Energy Justice Club. Well, students in the radical environmentalism class started mutual aid after that class. So yeah, it's a nice overlap between mutual aid and environmental stuff.
Just parsing in, because sustainability really is a very interconnected and universal thing that, like we mentioned earlier, has a lot to do with accessibility, funding, and the meeting of the basic human needs of the people that are participating in the systems that we look at. A question specifically for Henry. You mentioned earlier that you had a lot to say about the University of Pittsburgh's overall like plastics and recycling program. Do you have any more notes on like key issues or possible solutions to that?
Well, one of the big problems, as you said, recycling, as was the case back when you were a student at Pitt, and still now, there's still a lot of problems with recycling being contaminated, and the low. And for those people in the audience who don't know, Pitt's recycling partners have very low standards of tolerance for the contamination they'll accept compared to what's acceptable in normal curbside recycling. So much of the plastic waste at Pitt ends up being thrown away. And this is definitely one of the areas that would be comparatively easy for the university to make a big change in. And that's certainly one of the easiest, most obvious ones. And quite frankly, there still are a lot of plastic packaging items that could be easily omitted. Like during the coronavirus pandemic, the university started having its library get on a non-in-person basis, so students could request paper books and then show up, call the library, and have the books delivered out to the outside of the building from staff inside. And the books would be delivered in plastic bags. That was one example of the ways in which the coronavirus pandemic caused a temporary spike in plastics consumption at the university.
Okay. Speaking of the COVID-19 pandemic, I do know that Larson mentioned earlier that that also impacted Chatham in a specific way. Do you have any more thoughts? I know you did talk about that during your actual highlight, but if you had anything more that you'd like to say.
Yeah, I think it would probably be similar to other schools, but the main problem came from like supply chain issues, and also around the time when it wasn't like mainstream information of how it truly spread, like when people still thought it was like a big surface issue problem. You know, we weren't allowed to go through the trash anymore, and that's not fun. So it was harder to remove contamination. And then also like a lot of things just weren't being composted anymore because they were worried that they were like contaminated with COVID. So a lot of things were just going into the trash. And then with supply chain issues, we weren't able to get as many like compostable things. So we just had to straight up use plastic, and it was like super painful. Especially because like things were takeout only at that point, you couldn't eat in the dining hall. So there was definitely, as Henry mentioned, we had a quick blip of like increase of plastic use, and I'm glad that's over.
Yeah. Another issue that I think is perhaps like a convenience and university just like simplicity trend is a lot of universities switching from like sorted recycling in like, you know, the 90s and 2000s over to single stream recycling, which does, I think, increase contamination just in general, because you can all just toss it into one bag as compared to forcing people to think about it. And when that gets compiled with the introduction of easily contaminated things like foodware, or just not recyclable things like some foodware is, I think that gets pretty tough. Another question just for everybody. This one's one that I just kind of think would be an interesting one to hear. Do any of you see or foresee trying to collaborate either with the, you know, organizations that some of you are partnered with already, like Plan, or partnering with each other in the form of coming, you know, together as peer institutions on different student initiatives or projects in the future? Or would you just like to in general?
Ooh, Pitt, Chatham, and CMU collaborated on their divestment from fossil fuel protest, which was really cool.
I definitely think it'd be really interesting to like reach out to people that have done projects that I've been interested in doing, but didn't know how to like facilitate at WVU. So yeah, I think it's really important to like take like success stories from other people and bring it back to like where you're from.
I definitely agree with that. Okay, moving into pretty much at the end of all of the questions that we have so far. If anybody who's left has any questions, feel free to drop them in. I have just, I think, 2 more left pretty much, but we're also almost at the end of time. So this could take up the rest of it if we stretch it out. One thing is just a quick maybe success story share if anybody's interested. Basically what I have here is that it's effective decision making on sustainability initiatives is kind of hard because we have to ask people to break their routines and kind of like change what they consider to be their normal or convenient solutions. Aside from maybe like the green boxes or mandatory things like every single student getting a reusable tumbler or bottle, are there any success stories about reaching large populations of either students or community members for sustainable change? another piece of this question that Diane just threw in that could kind of fit into it, or any of the programs that you did already discuss, because we're sort of asking this at the end. So you've already talked about all of your coolest success stories for the most part. What are some of the roadblocks that maybe some of you ran into that you were able to break through or overcome while trying to work on your projects?
I don't have anything specific necessarily, but I think students tend to be more interested in engaging with things that feel bigger than individual choices. So if it's a petition to get your school to sign a pledge, or a divestment campaign, or like a climate strike, I think, creating opportunities for students to show their support for things that they actually think will make a substantial impact on campus tend to be ways where I see some more students engage. I mean, it's like pulling teeth trying to get people to do the reusable container program just because they want to. But like if reusable containers are the only option on your campus, then that's like, something that your campus as a whole has bought into, and that feels like a change that your administration has I guess people like to push their administrations to implement values. And so like something like that is a values-based change. And if students feel like they're pushing for that and they get that, then it feels more worthwhile than like, I'm going to do my reusable container because makes me feel good. But like, that feels like a drop in the bucket,
Okay, Megan?
I agree with that sentiment, and also just working with the variety of stakeholders that is necessary when it comes to sustainability, especially on college campuses, like trying to appeal to administration and what their goals are. And for Rachel and I was also working with the dining company and just finding ways that our sustainable solution is like directly beneficial to them, and just finding a way that it like directly appeals to them so they're a little bit more enticed to get on board. So I know for me it was finding a way to solve the issue of space for cleaning the green boxes in the dining facility. I was able to find a solution for that, and that really helped get the administration, especially the dining company, on board, because it was solving another one of their problems. So then that was one thing that I know we worked through for our internship, is just anticipating all of the roadblocks and then trying to think progressively of how to address them, like before they even arrive.
Very cool.
I don't really have time to ask to address this, but I want to at least suggest that you guys get off the campus out into the community and form community partnerships, including internships, and maybe you'll find a job that way. Just a thought. I don't know if anybody wants to comment on that. The other thing is we don't want to reinvent the wheel, but if anybody wants to reinvent the tire, that's a tremendous opportunity, because automobile tires are worth less than nothing right now.
Very great point there.
I want to just echo what Ed said, in that I get in my email box every week jobs that deal with getting rid of plastic. So they're out there. So you guys can be rest assured that all of your experience can be used out there in the workforce.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay, so we're coming into the last couple of minutes here. I don't think that I've seen any other questions come in through the chat. And I have one left, which I'd appreciate it if all of our panelists could answer, but if you don't have anything that you feel you want to contribute, you certainly don't have to, but just one key takeaway or learning objective or closing thought for any of our remaining participants here. And you can just raise your hand, and then that'll make it easier to pick order, because I don't want to call on anybody while they're mid-thought.
What's going on?
Okay, Rachel.
Yeah, my takeaway is always the same. And I guess this is like just more broad. I think if you're not having fun organizing on your campus, then you're doing it wrong. And I think like you can like spend so long like banging your head against the wall trying to get somebody to implement a reusable container program, and that's certainly like worth doing, but more than half of your time should be spent doing something that you want to do and that feels fun and that you feel like you have autonomy over. So like every time I talk to students, I'm like, are you having fun doing that? Like, are you enjoying this? If you're not, then do something else. And I think in general, like that's how you organize, is like making community in that, and doing something that like brings something to you. So that's always like my like main message in everything, whether it's plastics or like anything else on campus. So I'll start with that.
Thank you, Rachel. If there's Henry, please go ahead.
One thing I'd like to say is that a lot of the sustainability initiatives at universities aren't necessarily themselves sustainable in the sense that they're being run by students who will graduate in 2, 3, or 4 years. There's a lot of initiatives at Pitt have kind of been created and fall apart that way because the person who was the passionate leader who had the know-how graduated. And the true test of organizations is if they can stand the test of the very short generations of universities and be handed down from one class of students to another. To make an impact, you need to be able to create a lasting organization.
Okay, Larson.
Yeah, I think in terms of initiatives, it's important to be critical of systems but kind to people, because too often we see the blame put on individuals, and I think that distracts us from the real problems. So I think when you're doing these things, punch up, not punch down.
Very good. Megan?
I agree. I think it's really important to enjoy what you're doing. I loved the project that I was able to work on. And I also think, again, it's important to come in when you're suggesting a change, having all of this information in your back pocket and just like thinking forward and anticipating, so then you can just be ready and to answer anything that is thrown at you. I think that was one of my biggest takeaways from my internship. And I feel as if that's not only applicable to sustainability initiatives, but to a lot of different initiatives to change the culture and just the not ideal way that we go about things in this society.
Thank you, Danielle.
I would say something I've really like taken away is to just like get involved in any way. I know when I first started, I was like really scared that like I wasn't gonna have the knowledge or I wasn't gonna do something right. But I kind of figure out like, I mean, people definitely have knowledge, but like to a certain extent, no one's completely prepared. So you're always learning, you're always like being a better organizer, a better leader. So just getting to like get in there and just doing something is better than like doing nothing. Because again, you're learning and becoming better through those things.
Thank you. Jenna?
Yeah, I think to echo sort of what a couple other people said, I think it's important to sometimes take a step back and readjust your perspective to not get discouraged. Like it's very easy to get overwhelmed and anxious about how can I possibly solve all of these problems in my lifetime. But like looking at like, especially some of the other schools here where like, for example, like Chatham, like and Pitt, CMU looks at those schools, at least we do, and we're like, wow, they're so much more sustainable than we are. But, you know, from the other perspective, from your perspective, maybe that's not true. But I think, you know, we still should, you know, look at the things that we have been able to accomplish, regardless of the starting point. And, you know, there's always more to go. So, it, you know, it feels like maybe a little bit too much, but I think it's important to take a step back sometimes and just appreciate so far what you have been able to accomplish.
Thank you so much. Do you have any thoughts, Rachel?
Yeah, for whatever reason, I couldn't find the raise hand function. I was like really struggling. But,
no worries.
Raise your hand then.
Yeah, I should have, honestly. I was pretty much just gonna, you know, like everyone has said, just get active, really focusing on one project is super important, I think. And especially Ed, like you said, taking what you've learned back into your community here at school. And like when you go home, talking to your family about it, talking to your neighbors about it. It's super important to involve anyone you can think of because, you know, it's everyone's earth. They care too, even if it's in a different way than you do.
Thanks, and I'll toss it over to Maren for some final outros and event shout outs. Thank you all again for having me and for all of our panelists for attending and doing a fantastic job answering a wide variety of questions and doing your highlights. Thank you all so much.
I echo that sentiment. You're all doing amazing work and presented it admirably. So thanks so much for being part of this event. And thanks, Zach, for being such a great facilitator. That was all deserving of lots of kudos. There are a few things coming up which have gone by in the chat. And so I just wanted to get them on. Some of them are events far down the line. So even people watching this on video later will may still be relevant. The biggest one is coming up next June in Harrisburg, a organized statewide an event called 3-day event called the Pennsylvania Climate Convergence with organizers spread across the state. And the first day will be kind of a festival atmosphere, trying to draw more people in, having a lot of climate and environmental art and a lot of tabling by organizations and way to connect with more people. And also, I think that evening we'll be having a major keynote talk by George Lakey, who's a really amazing activist, philosopher, and has author of several books on organizing and movement work. On Sunday, there will be, that's Saturday, on Sunday, the 12th, there will be a march around Harrisburg highlighting manifestations of the poor job that the state is doing at protecting Pennsylvanians and the future of the whole world, as we are one of the biggest carbon emitters. And on Monday, there will be direct action, some of it arrestable, some of it lobbying with legislators or aimed at legislators, and some of it in direct contact with legislators. So there's a website now, PennsylvaniaClimateConvergence.org. PAClimateConvergence.org might also exist, but at some point, but it doesn't work yet. So PennsylvaniaClimateConvergence.org. Before that, a youth-led effort to do around Earth Day, which is April 22nd, and April 22nd falls on a Friday, which is the perfect day for a school strike for climate. And so there's going to be a climate strike with some big events downtown. And that is being led by area youth, and some of us old people are also helping out where we can. And this coming Wednesday, and so that's in April, Earth Day, this coming Wednesday, an organization called Halt the Harm, which has to do with the harm of fracking in the petrochemical industry, will have a webinar on the impacts of methane, since methane is, it was touted as a transition, a bridge fuel, and much less damaging than coal from a climate standpoint. And while it is less polluting from coal when it's burned, it is much worse as a greenhouse gas, like 87 times as potent a greenhouse gas per molecule over a reasonable time scale, because it's fairly short-lived. And the gas industry is trying to expand even more and use methane for things like making gasoline, as well as plastics. Probably, I mean, everyone here knows that there's a big plastics build out happening in our region, starting with the Shell plant up in Beaver County. So there's a link, lu.ma/methane-rule-frontline, and that's coming up right January 26th at 3 p.m. It's a webinar, and you would then learn how to have input on strengthening methane rules. Any other events? Ed has an event in mind. We have an event in mind for February with PASSUP. You guys brought in the higher education work, and we're also going to take a look at K through 12. And then at some point in the not too distant future, Professor Laura Lovett will regale us with her amazing insights on the history of plastic and how we lived without plastic and why we are where we are. So any other events that I'm missing? The next
Diane, what'd
sustainability
you say
salon is
about
February 5th. What?
Diane put April in there. I don't know if that she
Oh, no, that's just
April Glycera.
No, that's just amplifying what someone said, Ed.
Oh,
And I
oh,
just wanted
sorry.
who was a co-founder of PASSUP.
Yeah, and I just wanted
Um,
to also say, Maren, thank you for bringing up the event in Harrisburg, and that we really welcome students and anyone else who's interested,
Mhm.
because we're still working on that. And we would, it sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. And I thank you so much to Rachel for mentioning the fun factor, because I think that's really important. We are doing tough work in petrochemicals and are working against them. And it's really easy to burn out. So thank you for mentioning have fun. And that is my mantra as well. Sometimes I succeed more than others, but
Past master.
it would be really great to have you, any of you, join in on doing that event in Harrisburg.
Yeah, there are
I'd like
weekly
to
meetings.
see Yeah, we'd like to see some big art projects. We want to see some things that are left behind. We want to see, and this really has an opportunity to, be safe or to go for the restables. So anyway, contact Jen and she can give you more info.
Yeah, and I did, the website also has how to connect. We talked a little bit about eating lower on the food chain, and Sean mentioned in the chat, and the link is there, the Pittsburgh Vegan Society is having an online meeting on the 2nd of February at 7:30, and it's free to attend, and there's a link in the chat to the Eventbrite. And some other comments, April, who, as I mentioned, is a co-founder of PASSUP, said, it's inspiring that you're creating a new norm on campuses. Normalizing low plastic during college could lead future students to have stronger expectations when they go out to workplaces in their future communities. And that speaks to, one of my proudest moments is when I got the preschool that my kids were going to 20 years ago at Carnegie Mellon, doing, amazing Reggio Emilia preschool and doing amazing things, but some years earlier they had gone from using real dishes to using disposables. And so every day I would see, a little 2-year-old dump a bunch of trash in the garbage can that probably exceeded the mass of the food they just ate. And it was depressing. And I managed to get them to go back to real dishes, and they hired a work study student for a little extra help in the kitchen. And I hope it's still going on. But that's like 135 kids and 40, 50 staff, 3 meals a day. And that was just an enormous amount. And so what I was thinking of were these little kids having that inculcated into them, the normality of throwing away all this stuff every time you eat a bite of food. So thank you guys for helping denormalize it on campus.
Thanks, Maren. I think we better wrap this up, because as much as we'd like to see these students stay on their campus doing great work, they probably should graduate as well and move on.
Got to do your homework.
If anybody has ideas of bringing this sort of event to a larger stage with more colleges and universities, please use, any and all of us as a, clearinghouse. And I'd like to close this out unless anybody else wants the last word. Great job, everybody. You are all have the potential to be great leaders, either in this field or whatever you may choose to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Good night.
thanks everyone for attending. Thanks especially to the students for presenting and Zach for moderating. That was awesome.
Okay. And to all a good night.